Well, good evening, everyone. My name's Sarah Wright, and I'm the Executive Director of Utah Clean Energy, and I'm so pleased to welcome you all here tonight to this community forum and conversation about 100% renewable energy. This forum is part of Utah's first annual Climate Week, and the goal of Climate Week is to support events and conversations around climate change issues and solutions for Utah. And it has been an incredible week already, and looking forward to next year. We've had over 15 public events, a number of different partners, some of which you'll see tonight, participate, and also a number of business conversations, and even with Salt Lake County government conversations. So sincerely and excited about next year as well, and the rest of this week to follow. So Climate Week is a project of the Utah Climate Action Network. And, oh, this way, these were reversed.
I would leave it on that one, actually.
Okay. Thanks. The Climate Action Network. And the Climate Action Network, Utah Clean Energy is pleased to be the program manager and house the Climate Action Network, but it's really the brainchild of Salt Lake City and Park City, University of Utah, Westminster College, Alta Ski Resort, and Salt Lake County that came together to start a conversation and create a network to share solutions and best practices, to really look at how we can advance climate conversations and climate solutions in Utah, and I'm really pleased to be part of that network. Tyler, you want me to add? You'll add more. Tyler will give a little more if there's anything I missed on that as well that he'd like to cover. But it's really, think of it as a web sharing solutions and driving climate action forward in Utah. And with respect to climate, this is a pretty heavy time with California burning, with an historic hurricane season with amazing cost impacts and human impacts. And with Utah just coming out of another record-breaking heat, a summer of record-breaking heat, and associated record-breaking ground-level ozone pollution. It's a hard time, and it can be hard for all of our hearts, but I also want to say that right now, more than any other time, I have more hope than ever. Utah Clean Energy started working on this in 2001. Renewables were much more expensive. Climate conversations we weren't having these types of forums, and now renewables have dropped. They're competitive with fossil fuels, and in some cases cheaper. Energy efficiency, when you look at what's happened in energy efficiency, it's the third largest energy resource behind coal and natural gas, and it could be our largest resource. And with energy efficiency and renewables, we'll be able to solve a big part of this problem. So if there's nothing else, I hope that you leave here tonight with more hope and inspiration. And the other thing that's reason for hope is that, importantly, and it's what brings us here tonight, is that we have incredible visionary leaders, smart and passionate leaders setting goals for 100% renewable energy. And it's really with that honor and the thought of those leaders that I get to introduce Mayor Biskupski tonight. I think Mayor Biskupski has service in her DNA, because before becoming mayor, she served for 13 years at our legislature working on smart policies for all Utahns, all of us. Sorry, I'm a little bit... And since her election, Mayor Biskupski has continued to lead on many initiatives, and she's shaping the energy policy for our city and our state. And this summer, the mayor and the city council passed a joint resolution calling for 100% renewable energy by 2032, and 80% reduction in community-wide greenhouse gases by 2040. And since then, Park City, Moab, and just last week, Summit County have followed, and they have these ambitious goals. So And Mayor Skupski's work doesn't stop at Salt Lake City or Utah, and I can't speak to everything that she's doing nationally, but in reference to tonight, she's one of the co-chairs of the Sierra Club's Mayors for 100% Renewable Energy campaign. And under this program, over 150 mayors have committed to supporting 100% renewables community-wide. And so we're so pleased to have Mayor Biskupski here. I'm so thrilled for her leadership and to be able to partner with she and her team. And so thank you, Mayor Biskupski, for being here tonight and all your service.
Good evening, and thank you for being here this evening. It's a real honor for me to be really a leader in this country on the issue of climate change and all the work that needs to be done. It is certainly in my DNA and probably in my name that I am a public servant. Many of you know I was named after Jackie Kennedy, and so, you know, there's the beginning of it all. But thank you to the Utah Climate Action Network for all your hard work putting together the Utah Climate Week experience we are having here. And of course, thank you to tonight's panelists, Rocky Mountain Power, Heal Utah, and our very own SLC Green. Over the last 2 years, the opportunity to participate in the national conversation on climate and clean energy has been one of the most important things that I have done. Without question, climate change is one of the greatest threats facing the United States and the world we face today. Combined with the critical state of the nation's infrastructure, rising temperatures, more intense storms, raging wildfires, and shorter, drier winters is leaving our cities, our towns, and our rural areas in the path of disaster. Climate change is real, and the American people are ready for action. According to a recent poll by the Associated Press, more than 6 in 10 Americans think climate change is a problem that the federal government should address. The poll also shows that 42% of Americans oppose the United States withdrawing from the Paris Climate Agreement, and 57% of Americans favor local governments picking up the slack to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Of course, Salt Lake City is not only doing that, but we are recruiting heavily our other mayors across the country and their communities to be a part of the solution. Salt Lake City is committed to renewable energy for a variety of reasons: enhanced resiliency, improved public health, reduced damage to our natural environment, and of course, to do our part to mitigate climate change. With every solar project, EV station, and efficiency effort we complete as a city, we move closer to our goals and more in line with our aim to responsibly power our homes, businesses, and of course, government facilities like fire stations. When we committed to 100% renewable electricity last summer, we were the 16th city in the country to make that commitment and the first community in Utah to do so. Fast forward a year later, and now there are a few communities in Utah that have made this commitment, as you heard. And the attention and support Salt Lake City has been receiving since announcing our ambitious goals has been tremendous, and it is a very welcome sign. As we all know, Salt Lake City cannot make this transition to clean energy and successfully address climate change by ourselves. To that end, I was honored last year to be named co-chair of the Mayors for 100% Clean Energy campaign being spearheaded by Sierra Club. I was joined as co-chair by 3 other mayors across both the political spectrum and geographic landscape of our country. The momentum of mayors for 100% clean energy, combined with a collective response to federal inaction and on climate change, has resulted in 150 mayors across the country committing to 100% clean energy, many in the last year. This is an incredible shared achievement given how rare these pledges were just 1 year ago. At the U.S. Conference of Mayors annual meeting in June, further support for clean energy was bolstered when that body adopted a nonpartisan joint resolution endorsing 100% renewable energy. This same meeting delivered a separate resolution calling for climate action at the federal level and for strengthening the network of U.S. cities working together to reduce carbon pollution and build more climate resilient communities. We have seen yet again how important this work is given the natural disasters that have so drastically affected our fellow cities in the last months. Solar on the rooftops of government facilities represents just one of the ways we are marching toward a clean energy future. Earlier this year, the Rocky Mountain Power Subscriber Solar Project came online in central Utah, adding 81,000 solar panels to the generation mix powering Utah. Salt Lake City was the single largest subscriber to this program, enrolling 90 separate electric meters powering our government operations and doubling the amount of clean electricity dedicated to our facilities. We are a consumer of about 15% of that solar project. We are also working with Rocky Mountain Power to envision a much larger scale renewable energy project to ensure the city meets our government operations goal of being powered by renewable energy by 50% by 2020. Beyond government facilities, we are also collaborating to succeed on the larger goal of 100% renewable electricity for the entire Salt Lake City community by 2032. Most of the communities across this country have a goal of reaching renewable energy at 100% by 2035. So our ambitious endeavor is certainly getting the attention of many communities, but it is also gaining, I think, a real opportunity for us to continue to lead this discussion and show how this can be done when you partner. Government facilities that, when we go beyond government facilities, we are collaborating, and the collaboration that we have had has been tremendous, and it has been part of my discussion whenever I am out meeting with fellow mayors. This vision is part of the comprehensive package of clean energy solutions, including more robust energy efficiency efforts, support for electric vehicles, and a smarter, more resilient grid. These goals are described in greater detail in our new climate positive vision, which I'm sure Tyler will be discussing in detail today. Salt Lake City, Park City, and Moab are not alone in our efforts. I serve as vice chair of the U.S. Conference of Mayors Sustainability Alliance, and we recently released the results of a national survey of cities and their sustainability efforts. And there is good news. About 2/3 of the cities are using green fleet vehicles, have committed to renewable electricity, and require efficient buildings. Nearly 2/3 of the cities have a policy or program to install charging stations for electric vehicles, and 50% of the cities promote energy efficiency in commercial and residential buildings. Nearly 50% of the cities have policies in place to help residences and businesses choose renewable electricity options. We are taking those results and we are working toward some significant pilot projects that will go on over the next year across this country. Those projects will help guide the work that we are trying to do in helping all communities move in the same direction. There is still a great deal of work that must be done, but our partnerships are strong. The economics of renewable energy continue to improve, and the growing national support for this transition has been highly energized. It is a real honor for me to be able to do this work on behalf of our community, and I am very grateful to the mayors across this country who have entrusted me with a leadership role on this issue. I'm super grateful to my team of experts who continue to do the work to help other communities in our valley achieve some progress, as they don't have the expertise that I have the luxury of having, but we are trying to share that expertise and make a difference here at home. So yes, I will continue to do the work that I do nationally. I will continue to make sure my team is empowered to do what we are doing locally, and together we are going to make a big difference. So thank you again for inviting me here this evening to be a part of this, and I hope you enjoy your panel discussion. Unfortunately, I have to leave for yet one more thing, but I'm glad I was able to be here. Thank you.
Welcome, everybody. My name is Tyler Polson, and I work for the Salt Lake City Sustainability Department, also known as SLC Green on social media and in other channels. And I'm fortunate enough to work for the mayor, Jackie Biskupski, on energy and climate change with my focus, and alongside leaders in Utah such as Sarah Wright that have been working on this for a long time, and the work is paying off in a very major way for the state of Utah and for us locally, as I'll get to in a moment here. But what I'm going to do is work through a few different slides on kind of the state of where things are at and where we're headed on the topic of clean energy and also climate change. And then we'll transition into our panel discussion. And so for starters, Sarah had alluded to this relatively new collaboration that's been going on for a couple of years now called the Utah Climate Action Network. It's a group of roughly a few dozen organizations, let's say 60 or so organizations in government, in the private sector, in the nonprofit sector, representatives from the faith-based community in Utah that are committed to working within that network on advancing the climate change conversation. And really our big first attempt at having a public-facing impact was this idea of Utah Climate Week 2017. And the idea is really simple. Just create a platform for organizations to host their own discussions, to host their own social media campaigns and messaging campaigns for whatever stakeholder audience they deem appropriate. So there are roughly 19, I believe, public events happening from Ogden to Salt Lake City to Orem to Park City and a lot of places in between. And in addition to those 19 events, there's a lot of work going on behind the scenes in terms of people engaging their colleagues, coworkers, family members, and otherwise. And in large part, what we're trying to do is just inspire dialogue on this issue of climate change, which for far too long has been not approached by people, and to a large degree, people feel uncomfortable discussing about it, and address what Yale University recently called the spiral of silence. And they titled it after some polling data earlier this year, where they looked at the facts and saw that more than half of Americans indicate that they are concerned about climate change, but also that same subset of group, the vast majority rarely or never talk about it with family or friends. So if we can do it here in Utah as part of Utah Climate Week, hopefully that inspires others elsewhere around the country to do the same thing. And so this is just a depiction of the 25 plus organizations working on this issue and hosting these public events. And if you're interested in learning more, visit the Utah Climate Action Network webpage. You can find a full list of events. Most of them are through this week, but there are actually a few opportunities in late October as well. And so now to transition to the primary focus of this evening's event and panel discussion, pursuing renewable energy solutions. And importantly, pursuing transformative renewable energy solutions, such as that commitment to 100% clean power for our communities. And so what exactly do we need to transform? This graphic depicts where we're currently at. What it is, it's a reflection of the average Utah household. And our team at Salt Lake City, we looked at the publicly available data on the quantity of electricity, natural gas, and on-road transportation fuels that are used on a day-over-day basis 365 days a year. And we quantified those in terms of natural resource impact. And what we found that was in the average household in the typical day, their energy use equates to roughly 17 pounds of coal, plus 208 cubic feet of natural gas. So if you think of a cubic foot roughly being the size of a beach ball, combusting that much natural gas per day, and also 3 gallons of fuel for on-road transportation. And so as it relates to climate change and scaling up these impacts to a lot of households, both locally as well as nationally and globally, it's not hard to envision just the sheer quantity, the overwhelming quantity of heat-trapping gases that we're putting into the atmosphere, transforming our climate, our oceans, and the environment that we live in. But also this graphic has another story to tell, and that is one of opportunity. You know, the opportunity to address the energy issue, to have public dialogue and commit to sweeping solutions, and deliver not just climate solutions, but deliver a reduction in pollution that's going to improve public health, deliver local green jobs, enhance national security and self-sufficiency, both locally as well as on a broader scale, and just overall reorient the money that we're spending year to year on all of these fuels towards cleaner solutions that are now cost-effective. So an incredible opportunity. So what do we need to do to achieve all of those things? Well, in the words of Bill Gates, this is an article from 2 years ago in The Atlantic, where he was asked about climate change and what we need. And Mr. Gates said, we need an energy miracle. We need innovation and adoption of carbon-free technologies at an unnaturally high rate. Fortunately enough, Bill Gates comes from the technology sector where they're used to unnaturally high rates of innovation and change and adoption of technologies. And so the article isn't just about, we need a miracle, it's not going to happen. It's about, we need a miracle, and in the view of Mr. Bill Gates, he believes that the two complementary federal policies we need are a lot more R&D, or a lot more money funneled into R&D at the federal level, and then also a price on carbon. And so why exactly do we need an energy miracle? Why does Bill Gates feel this way? Why do climate scientists feel this way? Why do local officials feel this way? Many of you are already familiar with it, and I won't get too much into the global data, but so 2014 was the warmest year on average for the planet, followed by 2015, which broke that record, and then which was subsequently broken by 2016. And so that then led Jimmy Kimmel in one of his stand-up comedy routines to say, do you know when global warming is real? It's when the warmest year ever is whatever year you're in. And so global temperatures, we don't expect them to continuously rise in a way that every single year is record-breaking, like has happened the last 3 years. But the trends are clear. The last time we had global temperatures below their 20th century average in any given year was 1976, so not even in my lifetime, according to data from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. But what about locally? So the ice caps are melting, climate disruptions happening, but what's happening here? So this graphic was created using data directly from NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. They have a great online tool. You can go in there and download data sets for about the last 130 years at any scale you desire, globally, state level, or in this case, all the way down to the Salt Lake City data set. And so I took that data, put it in Excel, and averaged out per decade what the annual average temperature was in Salt Lake City, and looked at each decade from the 50s running through until the end of last year. And as you can see, the trend is clear. In Utah, as well as in Salt Lake City, according to the NOAA data, we are warming at twice the global average since roughly the 1970s or 80s. In addition to the decadal trends, I also looked at what was the warmest single year in any given decade, and how does that compare to historical averages. And that's where you see some of these years we've experienced recently literally jump off the charts, where they become unrecognizable to people that have lived in Salt Lake City their whole life. I have, where we've seen some winters that have seemed unlike a winter, where in the valley at least we're not receiving snowfall, it's rainfall, that's what the precipitation is. And things have clearly been transformed, and Utahns notice when you look at the polling data and ask whether they've experienced a change. It's a little bit challenging to envision, well, the temperatures are going up and degrees Fahrenheit rising. Well, what does that mean? And so I took the same data set and I looked at a city a bit south of here, Albuquerque, New Mexico, and took their annual decadal average, looking at the last few decades, and what that second star in orange near the top of the graphic represents is the average annual temperature in Albuquerque for the 1970s and 80s. It's extraordinary. We are experiencing annual average temperatures in Salt Lake City comparable to where Albuquerque was when I was born. It's not comparable to Albuquerque today. If you map their temperatures, you see a trend line just like this. The decadal averages are up, spiking out, off the charts, but now we've seen 4 years recently since 2012, roughly in line with where Albuquerque was in the 70s and 80s. So pretty extraordinary. So kind of to close on the climate issue and move into the solutions piece, there's a lot more that could be said about the science and what it means and its local implications, but the consensus, both the scientific consensus plus the consensus of facts that we observe, really point to 4 simple concepts. And these are concepts that you often see summarized by climate scientists themselves. If you look up these same terms, you'll see a lot of scientists in Twitter using the same logic here. But in essence, the state of science on climate change can be summed up by 4 things. 1, it's real, it's happening. 2, it is bad. That is in fact the scientific consensus. And it's not just bad for environmentalists. It's not just an environmental issue that we need to tackle for the sake of the planet. It's bad in terms of its social consequences, its economic consequences, and its human consequences. It's us. The connection between planetary warming to the combustion of fossil fuels and the greenhouse gases they release is inextricably tied to the warming we've seen in recent decades. And that is part of the scientific consensus. When you look at polling data, it's often confused. People will say, I agree it's warming, but I don't, what's causing it, I'm not so sure. But in fact, the scientific consensus is not just that it's real and it's warming, it's that it's warming and that it's us. That's an important piece. Finally, the consensus is, in fact, we can fix it. The technologies are here, they're accessible today, they're cost effective, and we can take action now, this year, next year, the coming decades, that is commensurate with the climate challenge. But will we take action? I was really proud of myself. I created this yesterday, and this is, what a way to lighten the mood. Throw up some emojis and, what are we doing? So will we do it? And that's kind of the theme that we're going to get into with this panel. So what's happened locally in terms of climate action? Salt Lake City has accomplished a tremendous amount in terms of the programs and projects around clean transportation and energy and engagement and putting the building blocks in place to move towards a cleaner 21st century community and economy. But in reality, when you look at the data, which we have on file every single year, we look at energy use and emissions associated with it, we still haven't moved the needle. The last 10 years, 2006 through now, Salt Lake City hasn't moved the needle at the community scale. Last year marked a really important transition for our community, for the state, and for a lot of other people nationally. The mayor and city council during the summer of 2016 signed a joint resolution committing to 100% renewable electricity for the Salt Lake community by 2032, in the next 15 years. The resolution also had a very specific climate goal related to greenhouse gas emissions. We're going to reduce greenhouse gas emissions 80% by 2040, at least energy-related greenhouse gas emissions. We were the 16th nation in the city to make the 100% renewable commitment at the time. Fast forward to now, there are over 150 cities, as the mayor had alluded to, and in large degree propelled by Sierra Club and their Mayors for 100% Clean Energy campaign. In addition to that, one very important thing, and it's depicted in this graphic, is Salt Lake City's commitment to partner with Rocky Mountain Power, that joint mutual commitment. So we have Mayor Biskupski here standing on the public safety building. You can see the library here in the background. Immediately behind her in the red jacket is Cindy Crane, the CEO of Rocky Mountain Power. Shortly after our mayor and council commitments, we were able to come to terms on what we call our Clean Energy Cooperation Statement that details from energy efficiency to electric vehicles to clean energy, everything that we're mutually agreeing to accomplish, including reaching that goal of 100% renewable energy by 2032 for the community. One important piece of context with that is, we're not going to be installing large-scale, utility-scale batteries everywhere and exclusively powering our community with windmills on the foothills and solar only in Salt Lake City, that sort of thing. We're going to work with Rocky Mountain Power and with their parent company Pacificor to catalyze enough gross new renewable energy development to meet our annual needs year over year and have that renewable energy fed into their system. They operate a 6-state electricity grid. The efficiencies are there in terms of balancing the grid and integrating a lot of renewables now. And fortunately for us, from a cost and benefit perspective on the financials, we don't have to do that in isolation with our own robust storage system, everything like that. We can integrate renewables on the generation side into their broader system and meet our goals and hopefully see that propel the next phase of development for others. So what does energy mean to combating climate change? This is the Salt Lake City community carbon footprint. It's from 2009, but in reality, if you look at it all the way through 2016, the general categories and their percentages more or less stay the same. And so, according to our carbon footprint, over 90% of the emissions come from electricity, natural gas, or on-road transportation. I'll break it down into a easier to read pie chart here. Over 50% are from electricity alone. So that, to me, demonstrates some sort of feasibility around reducing emissions. Oh, you want to reduce 80% of your emissions? Fortunately, 54% are tied to electricity, which you can migrate to renewable energy, decarbonize that system, and get a long ways of the way there. In addition, if you loop in on-road vehicles that we're now seeing with electric vehicles really taking hold, and they've got a lot more momentum coming on the horizon, electricity plus on-road transportation are over 70% of our carbon footprint. So, altogether, there's really 3 things that we'll be focusing on as a community, and that you see, there's a consensus around this as well in terms of what you need to do to combat climate change. First and foremost, reduce energy waste. Sarah had talked about this in her remarks, but through energy efficiency and conservation, really getting at the waste around energy use. This next concept, the second concept, electrify everything. So migrating to forms of energy that you can electrify in the way of transportation, as the technologies become more available in the way of space heating and water heating, and electrifying maybe not everything, but essentially everything. And then also renewable energy. And so I just wanted to finish with one quick piece in terms of why I'm hopeful, and that is kind of the solar panel itself. So most of you are familiar with this. A solar panel is typically 6 feet tall by 3 feet wide, weighs about 45 pounds. And if you were to install a 300-watt solar panel in Salt Lake City, over its 25-year warranted life, it'll generate a comparable amount of electricity to combusting over 10,000 pounds of coal, a single solar panel. And so you kind of think of that and go, well, of course it makes sense that this technology is now becoming not just competitive, but in a lot of cases, the most cost-effective way to generate power. And there's been a lot of progress in terms of solar energy and what's happening at what's known as distributed scale on rooftops. So in Salt Lake City, starting in calendar year 2010 and continuing through last year, we've seen about an annual doubling in terms of the amount of different solar arrays that are installed on households and businesses. And now there are over 1,000 solar installations within city limits. Statewide, Rocky Mountain Power published a report just recently showing that in Utah's Rocky Mountain Power territory, as of April 1st of this year, there are over 20,000 net metered solar arrays on residential and non-residential structures. So tremendous progress. When it comes to larger scale renewable energy, that's taking off in Utah as well. 2 years ago, I visited what at the time was the first utility scale solar project in Utah outside of Parowan, about 3.5 hours south of here. This project was 340,000 solar panels, and it was the first ever to be developed at this scale in Utah. Over the preceding 24 months, it was followed by about 10 other projects of comparable scale. And this is a graphic that shows where these projects are happening, mostly in central and southern Utah and the western part of the state, to where now we're at a place where there are roughly 3.5 million solar panels installed in Utah, all in the course of about 3 years. Transformative change in a way in about 3 years. So as it stands, Utah is 6th in the nation in terms of total solar installed, according to the Solar Energy Association, Industry Association. Last year, we were 2nd in the country behind California in terms of total amount of solar installed. And we're also 2nd in the country as it stands now in terms of amount of solar per capita. Only Nevada has more watts of solar installed per person than the state of Utah. I would encourage you to actually look at the State of Solar report from the Solar Energy Industries Association. It has a lot of great data, and one of those data pieces is jobs. Over 4,400 solar jobs in Utah. I believe 75% of those are related to the installation of solar panels, so jobs that you can't export elsewhere, jobs that are happening locally and employing people. And so kind of to close, we've made the commitment with our city council and mayor, and we've also seen 3 other cities in Utah, or 2 other cities, Park City and Moab, plus Summit County, come on board with the 100% renewable energy commitment. We just earlier this year published a study that's available online related to this commitment, and you can find more in our climate positive plan online. So there were some climate positive plans that you could have grabbed coming in. Bookmarks related to this, if you like to read, some bookmarks. But the plan highlights renewable energy, clean transportation, sustainable food, zero waste, and city operations.